This episode goes out to Fanta in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico.
Hi there, Megan Robinson here. Welcome to the 4th episode of the Nightblade Epic Podcast, Season 2. Hey, you haven't heard about our Discord server in a while. That's because a Discord server is a nice, quiet, calm place to be. Like a living room. A chill space to hang out with family and friends and talk about cool stuff. Not like social media, which is more like an auditorium packed with so many people trying to scream over each other that you can't even hear yourself think. Which, don't get us wrong, an auditorium can be awesome, like at a concert. You want to be surrounded by people at a concert. You want to be listening to really, really loud noise. But that's for like a few hours, every once in a while. You don't want a whole crowd screaming at you all the time, every day. Most of the time, you want a nice, calm living room with cool friends who want to hang out, chat, maybe have a drink. So I guess what we're saying here is you should hop into Legacy Books' Discord server. It's a living room, not a concert. You can find it at underrealm.net/Discord. Okay, now it's time for today's episode. Today you're getting chapters 5 and 6 of Mystic. When we left off, Lauren was fleeing from a mercenary army after Jordell killed their sentries to save Jem's life. Enjoy!
Mystic, Chapter 5. They came upon the camp in a clatter of hoofbeats to find Seth standing by the carriage, a naked sword in one hand and a dagger in the other. The driver's blades dipped as he saw them, but his face did not relax. "We are pursued," said Jordell quickly. "Leave the carriage. Load the horses with whatever we cannot do without." Without a word, Seth went to do as he was asked. Lauren slid from the horse, anxious to be away from Jordell. The mystic dismounted next, and finally Jem jumped from the saddle. To Lauren's horror, he wore a wide grin. "You were like a great warrior from the old tales," cried Jem. "You went through them like they were only children." Jordell did not acknowledge the words. He did not even look at the boy. Instead, he fixed Lauren with a pointed gaze, one it took her a moment to return. "I did not wish it," he said. "I have heard that said before," said Lauren. "Do you think I am like the merchant? Have I given you cause to fear for your life, poisoned you, sent the constables to hunt you down like a dog, to lock you up like a murderer? Not yet, but Damaris, too, killed others long before she turned her wrath on me." Seth appeared before Jordell could reply. The driver had cut the carriage horses free, and both bore saddlebags packed with supplies. In one hand he held Jordell's red cloak. "Ready we are, and the sooner gone the better, I say," said Seth. Jordell took the cloak and fastened it about his throat. "I shall ride with the boy." "You are heaviest. I will take him." Seth put one set of reins in Jordell's hand and went to Lauren with another. Lauren took a hasty step back. "I do not have enough skill in the saddle." "Can you keep from falling off at least?" growled Seth. "Any horse that bears you and one of us will be caught. You will ride alone or doom us all." "I will ride beside you and keep a ready hand on your horse's reins," said Jordell. "We must travel with speed, but you need not fear." Lauren bit her tongue before telling him that her greater fear did not stem from the horse. She swung herself up into the saddle. Jordell took her reins, and together they led their horses out of the trees and onto the road. There the mystic spurred to a gallop, and Lauren's horse leaped to life beneath her. She flung herself down and seized the beast's neck, clinging for dear life as its muscles bunched and thrust beneath her. Every jostle threatened to pitch her from the saddle, but somehow she held on. They rode and rode, slowing to a trot once every hour to keep the horses from collapse. Lauren turned to look back every time they slowed, but she never caught a glimpse of the sellswords. As the sun neared the horizon to their right, she felt herself relax somewhat. It seemed they would not be pursued, or that they had left their pursuers behind. By sunset, Jordell allowed the horses to slow to a walk. Once he did, he turned to Lauren. "They do not pursue us. Why?" Lauren was surprised by the question and not entirely pleased. "I am in no mood for your riddle games, mystic." Jordell gave a heavy sigh. "Lauren, I understand your concern, but if I had not struck when I did, they might have alerted the others. If they had, we should not have rescued Jem so easily." "Easily? 3 bodies lay soaked in blood behind us. Their bones will go to rest far from their homes, untended by their families. Mayhap they had wives, brothers, sons who will never know how they died." "It is not an easy truth to face," said Jordell, "and yet that is the lot of a sellsword, and no man signs the company bill without knowing that truth." "A fine excuse from the man who laid them to waste," spat Lauren. "I make no excuse," said Jordell quietly. "I have killed fewer men than I could have in my life, and yet over many years the number has grown too high. I excuse none of it. There is always a way to avoid it, yet I am like any man, and prone to error." "It was not error that drove your blade, but terrible fury," said Lauren, "and no words of yours will tell me otherwise." Jordell left her alone after that, though she often caught him looking at her afterwards. Soon Seth found a clearing not far off the road, close to the river and hidden by a rocky rise. There they made a camp with no fire, for Jordell still feared detection. Seth chose to erect a tent, but Jordell went without, as did Lauren. Jem still felt drawn to lie and look at the stars. The air hung thick and silent with tension, broken only by occasional meaningless words from the mystic and the driver. Gone were any thoughts of asking Jordell about his childhood. Lauren tried not to even look upon him. After a quick and bland meal, she stood. "I shall be back." "Where are you going?" said Seth, looking at her with suspicion. "That is not your business," snapped Lauren. "To make water, then." "Let her be, Seth," said Jordell. He studied Lauren for a long moment. "Will you return?" Lauren's nostrils flared. "I said I would." "Good." The mystic nodded, and that was that. Lauren headed for the river, following it south until she could no longer hear Seth and Jordell's conversation. She found a log that jutted out into the river and sat upon it, pulling off her boots and dipping her bare feet in the water. Tilting her head back, she stared up at the stars, but they seemed to glow red, as if doused in the blood of the men Jordell had slain that morning. That image was slow to leave her mind. "He had no choice, you know." Jem's quiet voice startled her, and for a moment Lauren thought she might slip from the log. But she regained her balance with a quiet curse as the boy sidled out to sit beside her. "There is always a choice," said Lauren. "Always. Even choosing to die rather than kill is a choice." "Not one I would ever make," snorted Jem. "I am not too proud to say I value my own neck above any other's. Even yours, you will forgive my saying." "I do forgive your saying," said Lauren. Then, with a sharp shove, she pitched Jem into the river. He sank beneath the current with a yelp, and Lauren laughed. His head broke the surface a moment later, arms thrashing. She heard him cry, "Help!" before he sank again. She realized her mistake immediately. Jem had grown up in the city, and Cabras's filthy sewers were not fit for swimming. He had likely never learned. Lauren shot up and pitched herself into the water. Almost immediately she found a thrashing form in the darkness. She seized it before swimming for the riverbank. A few strokes brought her to standing depth, and she only caught Jem's elbow in her ear once or twice before she had him safe on the dirt, sputtering and coughing. "You crazy witch!" cried the boy. Were you trying to kill me?" "Oh, leave off," said Lauren, giving him another shove. He fell into the sand of the riverbank, and as he rose, it stuck to his soaked clothes. "How was I to know you could not swim? Besides, the river is practically shallow enough to stand all the way across." "For you, mayhap, you great tree," Jem grumbled. He ducked into the shallows again to get the sand off. "My body was built for wisdom and cleverness, not for height." Lauren laughed at that. Soon Jem had wrung himself as dry as he was going to get. Together they climbed to the top of the bank where the grass formed a cushion for them to sit. Lauren cast her hair out in the warm summer night's breeze, thankful the air had not cooled over much since daylight. Jem spoke first. "In any case, what do you mean to do about it? If you would sooner take a blade than use one, that is your way. It is not Jordel's, nor most people's. Will you abandon anyone who dares fight for a living, or for their own life? You will soon find yourself more lonely than you might wish." "I will not bandy about with a killer," said Lauren firmly, "and I will not excuse those who take another's life when they could spare it. You saw the way he fought. He could have struck them all unconscious without spilling their blood. He moved fast enough. He acted quickly, out of fear for our lives, not his own, unless I miss my guess. And he acted on instinct, without knowing half what he was doing, as you did when you threw me into the drink. I might have died then, but would you have spent your whole life moping?" Lauren looked at him in shock. "Of course. Do you think you mean so little to me that I would not mourn your death? I mean to see you live to old age, Jem, a rich and lazy scholar who spends his days reading books." Jem scoffed and turned away. She placed a hand on his shoulder and turned him back towards her. "I mean it, Jem. I would have done anything to save you, from the water just now or from the riders today. I only think it could have been done without murdering soldiers whose names we did not know and who did us no harm." The boy pursed his lips. He slowly looked up into Lauren's eyes, while his own glinted with starlight. "I will tell you something now, Lauren, and I will speak to you truly. No one has stuck themselves out for me before, certainly never so far as you. It takes getting used to. But those men today would have killed me, and not quick or honorable. Given a choice, I will take the man who spills blood for me in an instant over the girl who takes an hour figuring out a way to not hurt anyone." Lauren's heart felt suddenly frozen. Slowly she withdrew her hand. "Well, mayhap next time I will let them carry you off to die, then. I meant no offense, only nothing. Come, we should be getting back." Though he followed, Lauren could see the misery in his expression and gait. Yet she could not find it within her to care. Was she mad for holding that each life was sacred? That no one held the right to kill with ease? "If I am the only one, then curse them all. I would rather stand alone on the side of right than stand on the side of wrong with an army at my back." But that did not calm her churning doubts, nor did it help her sleep. She lay awake for a long, long time, staring up at the moons before slumber finally claimed her. She came awake with a start, a rough and dirty hand covering her mouth. In an instant she was alert, and she tried to pry the hand away so that she could scream, but in the next instant her eyes met the face above her, and her body fell to sudden stillness. Dark locks swung from the man's head, and a quiet smirk painted his lips. "Greetings, Lauren of the family Nelda," whispered Zane. "Now come quick and quiet before the mystic awakens." Mystic, Chapter 6. Lauren had to wait a moment before she felt fit to reply. When her nerves calmed and her heart regained its pace, she reached up and pried the wizard's fingers away from her mouth. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "Not now," said Zane. Come." He slipped away, and Lauren heard his heavy footfalls fading into the night's ink. A flash of starlight glimmered off his long brown locks as he crested a rise to the camp's south, and then he was gone. Lauren gained her feet without a sound, glancing at Jem for a moment. The urchin's snores ripped through the calm night air, the only sound apart from the gurgling of the nearby river. Jem would keep. If need be, she could return for him. But the boy always woke with a clamor, and he might rouse Jordell or Seth if she tried to bring him now. She crept away, far more quietly than Zane had. As she neared the rise, she saw Seth lying prone in the grass. For a moment she feared him dead. Then she heard his heavy breath wheezing out against the turf under his face. Zane had subdued him then, but had not struck to kill. That comforted her. She wished for no more dealings with murderers. Just over the rise, Zane waited with an expectant look. He motioned her forwards with a furtive wave as soon as she came into view. Together they moved on, drawing nearer to the river, where the running water's whisper would mask their voices. At last Zane stopped and turned to speak, but Lauren burst out talking before he uttered a word. "Where have you been? We have ridden many days upon the road and found you nowhere." Zane smirked. "I too am glad to find you safe and whole." Lauren rolled her eyes, though she realized he might not see it in the dark. "I am glad you are safe, but where is Annis?" "Which question shall I answer first, girl, or may I make everything clearer in my own time?" Lauren folded her arms and stamped her foot, glaring at him, but she spoke no further. Zane nodded, taking her silence for assent. "Annis waits nearby, along with our horses. We left behind our carriage long ago, as you did today. We have been waiting for the right time to rescue you, and I am not yet sure it has arrived. But with an army at your back, a better time might never come, and mayhap the mercenaries' pursuit will distract the mystic enough to make good our escape." "What do you mean, rescue? We were in no danger before today, and I think we have left our pursuers far behind." "Do not be so sure," said Zane grimly. "For while their main force cannot cover ground as quickly as you four, they may yet send outriders after you. I say may, but it is more than likely. Such a fighting force will not like 4 wandering mouths and wagging tongues to be free in the world. We would do well to be away before they find the mystic." "You know with whom I travel, then? Have you met before?" Zane's eyes grew hooded, and he looked away. "You might say I know the man less than the cloak he bears upon his shoulders. None should trifle with mystics, for they are fey and quick to turn from friend to foe. Had I been there when you encountered him, I would have warned you against him. But tell me, why does he travel with you in the first place?" Lauren thought hard upon her answer, looking over her shoulder towards Jordell's camp. "I owe the mystic nothing," she thought. "He seeks you," said Lauren. "He heard from the constables that you traveled with the girl, that is, me, and soon guessed that I could help him find you. I might have ignored his offer, except that without him I might never have escaped the walls of Capris." Zane's face paled in the moon's light. "Why does he seek me? Has he told you? What is his name?" Lauren smirked at him. "Which question shall I answer first, wizard? Or may I make everything clearer in my own time?" Zane grabbed her shoulders and shook her. "I play no games, girl. What is his name?" But Lauren had well earned her reputation as the best wrestler in her village. She seized his forearms and spun, twisting the wizard's arms until he yelped. Then she gave him a gentle shove while placing her foot behind his, sending him crashing to the ground. Again she folded her arms as she looked down upon him. "You may command the elements, but you are a poor fighter. As for your question, his name is Jordell. Does that mean anything to you?" Zane looked more frightened than angry. Slowly he rose and ran fingers through his hair as he paced back and forth. "Jordell, I never knew. We never drew close enough to see his face. I thought I had left him back at the High King's seat. He must have followed me all the way to Cabris. Our escape was far more fortunate than I knew. We must put as much distance between ourselves and that man as we are able, and as quickly as possible." "I wish for the mystic's company no longer," said Lauren. "I will go with you, but I would know, what brought you back? You have left me twice already, and you have tried to leave more often than that. You could have been halfway to one of the outland kingdoms by now." Zane's jaw twitched twice in quick succession, and he scowled. "I have told you often enough that I have no interest in watching over a young girl. Yet I suppose when I saw you in the company of a red cloak, I could not leave you to your fate without at least trying to help." "Annis had nothing to do with this decision, then?" The lines in his face deepened. "It is true that for such a young child, the girl can be most persuasive. Indeed, I would not have left her alone even now, except that she cannot seem to stop talking for so much as a moment." Lauren smiled and stepped forwards, patting Zane gently atop his long curls. "Oh, dear wizard, when it comes to it, are you nothing more than a soft-hearted old man?" Zane swatted her hand away angrily, and his eyes glowed white in the darkness as flames sparked from his fingertips. "Remember to whom you speak, girl, lest I roast you for supper." Lauren chuckled. "Very well, then. Let us be away, but not until I fetch Jem." "The boy? He is nothing to the mystic, and will be safe in his company. You risk detection if you return. If the mystic finds out about me, I will not hesitate to leave you behind." Lauren waved an airy hand. "You are the one who forgets to whom you speak. They will no more hear me than they would a breath of wind in the night." She turned and walked away without waiting for Zane's reply. The river's murmur faded behind her as she crept towards the camp without a sound. Her eyes had grown used to the starlight now, and she saw clearly where Jordell lay wrapped in a bedroll mere paces from the horses. Jem lay nearby, but not too close. Their escape would be easier than she had feared. She measured each footfall. Her every breath came slow and careful, gently nudged through slightly parted lips. Once Jordell shifted in his sleep, and Lauren froze for a heart-stopping instant. But the mystic only rolled on his side, facing away from Jem. Lauren pressed on. In moments she reached Jem's side. As Zane had done with her, she placed a hand over the boy's mouth to stifle any cry as he woke. His eyes shot wide, almost glowing as they caught the reflection of the moons. Lauren waited for him to still before she leaned in, close enough that her lips almost brushed his ear. "We are leaving," she breathed. "Zane has returned, and I wish to travel with the mystic no longer." Gently she drew her fingers away, but rather than move to rise, Jem whispered back far too loudly. "I do not want to go. Why would we?" Lauren clapped her hand back over his mouth. "Be silent. You will wake him. Come with me beyond the bounds of the camp. I will explain everything there, but you must trust me for now. Zane says that Jordell is dangerous. After today, I am inclined to believe him." Jem rolled his eyes at that, but he remained silent when she removed her hand, and once she drew back, he rose to follow. He quietly scooped his pack from the ground and padded away after her. Lauren was glad to find his steps far softer than Zane's. She collected her own pack, slinging it over her shoulder under her cloak, and together they stole away south. They had nearly reached the camp's edge when Seth snorted above them and half rose on his forearms. Hard in her throat, Lauren grabbed Jem's arm to lead him away. She dragged him west around the rise. The driver started, his head lolling as though he were drunk. In moments he would realize they were gone. "Hurry," Lauren dared to whisper. They slipped far enough away that Seth vanished from sight, and then she broke into a run. Jem struggled to keep up with her on his much shorter legs, his silent feet darting over the grass like a rabbit's. "Attack!" Seth's voice behind her made Lauren jump. She doubled her pace as she landed. Now she very nearly dragged Jem, and the boy struggled to stay upright.
"Jordell," cried Seth, "there has been an attack. Wake up."
Lauren felt a moment's relief. He had not spotted them, but Jordell would search for them in the darkness, and it would not take much guesswork to see that south seemed their most likely course. "Faster," hissed Lauren. She led Jem slightly west until they came near the bank of the river. There they sped along until at last she saw Zane lurking in the darkness not far ahead. "The driver woke," she gasped as they reached the wizard. "It will be only moments before they are upon us." "To the horses," said Zane. "Be quick, but be silent." He ran on ahead, and Jem groaned as Lauren pulled him along. They climbed up and down the rolling hills that marched beside the river, until at last Lauren crested one to spy a pair of horses below them. "Can you ride?" said Zane. "Poorly," said Lauren. "I will take the boy then. Come." Zane vaulted into the saddle and reached down for Jem's outstretched hand. Lauren's legs shook from fear and exertion, but somehow she managed to gain the saddle. The wizard seized her horse's reins before spurring his own mount forwards, and together they galloped into the night, and though Lauren looked often over her shoulder, she saw no sign of pursuit. From danger into the unknown, she thought, and wondered if she might ever know peace again.
This has been a production of Legacy Books, written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. Today's letter is O. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.